Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, make sure that you hit that subscribe and notification bell because everything we talk about on today's show, you're not going to find anywhere else. My brother Thom is an amazing dude. He's done some amazing things in and out of a uniform. I mean, Navy SEAL, sniper, keynote speaker, ultra runner. He does it all. Thom, welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate what you're doing, and I enjoy watching you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Thom, before I get started, because I got a TBI, and if I don't mention it, I'm going to forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
Resilience to me is a willingness, probably every day, to be uncomfortable and to fail and to recover, which is kind of apropos about coming back. Resilience to me is how many times you've hit a sandy bottom and gotten back up.
I love it. So now tell us a little bit about where'd you come from, where'd you grow up? Give us a quick down and dirty about you.
Bro, I think I think I grew up at the greatest time in world history. I grew up in Southern Indiana in the 70s and 80s, where literally, I thought anything was possible, in a really small farm town where beer and football were the staples of human life. And I grew up when I was 9. I had a trap line, trapping mink and muskrat and fox and raccoons, and I really thought everything was possible. And that took me to I was a really good football player, and I turned down a full ride to Tennessee to go play at West Point, and ended up playing at West Point for 3 years. And then I hit the resiliency button that you were talking about. I hit a sandy bottom. I flunked out in English, which took me probably 10 years to be able to say in public. And what does somebody do who flunks out of one of the academies but still wants to be of service to the country? I signed up for the SEAL teams. And then I spent 23 years in the SEAL teams doing God's work.
All right. Now, I love that. Now, when you were coming up in high school, because I've talked to a lot of Navy SEALs, John McCaskill, Davini, I talked to all you amazing guys. And a lot of them said they played high school sports. Some of them wrestled. And they said because that created a lot of mental strength. So when you were coming up in high scholl, you actually played a lot of sports. So did that help with your mental strength as well as your physical strength?
Yeah, I was a 3-sport athlete. I was football, wrestling, and track. Probably the least high performance was in wrestling, just because I got injured. Seems like every other week, and it didn't create as much mental resilience as it did physical. How uncomfortable can you continue to be over time, which really made a big difference in the SEAL teams. My time not doing well wrestling made me a better SEAL. I don't think the things that made me mentally more resilient were the soft skills, like struggling in relationships and struggling and academically, made me better later.
All right. So now, like I said, I've talked to like a lot of you, a lot of special soldiers like yourself. And the one question I ask, and I love the answers that I get, is there was a lot of people when you went through that rang that bell.
Mm-hmm.
And, like when I talked to Rich, when I talked to John, they said the one thing that they decided, I'm either going to die or I'm going to pass out. I'm not going to quit. So what was it that made you decide, I'm not ringing that bell? What was it? So talk to us a little bit about getting through that selection process.
I have to probably take a little more time to answer that one.
We got all the time in the world, brother.
So the ringing so there's 3 ways out of SEAL training: medically or get injured. The other one is to fail academically, and the other one is to quit. I ended up being an instructor later. So 2001 to 2004, I became a BUDS instructor, which is a big eye-opening experience to talk about quitting, what it's like to quit. Your job as an instructor is give them every way to quit possible, mentally, emotionally, physically, browbeat their parents, whatever it does, whatever you can do to get somebody to quit. So take a step back to being a student. Uh, when I signed up for SEAL training, it was prior to the internet giving you any information. And a lot of people listening cannot even fathom not being able to Google everything. So at that point in time, I had already had a sandy bottom hit. I'd been to West Point. I'd already recovered, and somebody that had been a Navy SEAL in World War II, it was called something different then. When I hit that sandy bottom, he said, "Hey, Thom, here's the deal. What do you think about most of the time?" And I said, "Man, I've always wanted to be a SEAL like you." And he goes, "If you think about it all the time, you think about it at your worst points in time, go sign up right now." And I'm like, "Oh shit, Pat, I don't even know how to swim." He goes, "You'll figure out how to swim when you're committed. Until you're committed, you don't have a chance." So I signed up for SEAL training without the ability to actually pass the test. Uh, and I didn't even know what I was going to get into. All I knew was that I would rather do that lifestyle than work in the business world, which probably I knew nothing about that either. So I'm still the only one who has been into Hell Week 5 times because I decided there ain't no way I was going to quit. I got injured in my first class in Hell Week. I got a concussion. In my second class, I dislocated my shoulder. And every time they came to me and said, "You're going to quit. Might as well just do it now." I'm like, "I'm not going to quit." And they offer you a way back in if you're not going to quit. If you can medically do everything and performance wise, you can do everything, you can stay there. And they knew after the second class I wasn't going to quit. So they offered me a third try. I got pneumonia in Hell Week and they asked me to quit and I said no. And then I had to start a week later with pneumonia, and they not going to kick you out if you can perform. Had a lot of scar tissue from the pneumonia, showed up heavily in my fourth Hell Week, and they kicked me out of training. So I ended up having to work at a hospital because I was a corpsman. And every day I went to the admiral and asked him to send me back. He actually demoted me a rank. I went from E5 to E4. And reason why is because he ordered me never ask him again. And I did the next day anyway. And I ended up back in training 9 months later instead of waiting 2 years because I refused to quit. So by the time I got to class 207, I knew inside there was no way they were going to make me quit. And it does occur to you when you're going through it and when you have that level of resilience that I'm either going to die, I'm going to wake up in heaven, or I'm going to wake up at the end of the class. And so we started out with 111 men in class 207 and graduated 11. And all those 11 just decided there's no way I'm out other than making it through. Everybody else quit or got sick or injured or failed. And that's a devastating number. Really, the number is telling everybody listening and watching that if you don't quit, life is wonderful. If you quit, you suffer forever. And the people that don't make it through training because they quit, man, they carry that terrible stigma with them forever.
And, one thing, like, they call me the comeback coach because I've come back from so many things: drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, and I just never quit. I'm writing
Yep.
a book right now called "Too Dumb to Quit,"
Mm-hmm.
but and because I just believe that a lot of people, whether it's in business or whether it's in the military, whatever it is, they quit like 5 minutes before the miracle is going to
Oh,
happen.
always, always.
You
Yep.
know.
Yep.
So now,
And that's the thing that happens in SEAL training is people quit right before it gets easier. Like everything ends. They're called evolutions in SEAL training, like a run or a swim or a beat session. It's going to end, and people quit right before it ends. Like when it's really hard, you can't do anymore is when people quit. Man, if you just hung on, it will work out. And I'm glad that I learned that as a SEAL.
Now, like I've met like a lot of SEALs. Like I said, I've met a lot of you guys, and like I even told John, I was joking around. I'm like, when I first seen seen the movie Navy SEAL, like everybody
Mhm.
else, I thought everybody 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes, and jacked. But now people like the SEALs that I'm meeting, they sometimes they look more like my accountant
Yep.
than they do, the swimmer or the look. And he said, that a lot of times the guys that are jacked, the guys that are bodybuilders, they're the ones that wash out the quickest. True.
100%. Yep. As an instructor, the number one person in the class going into Hell Week is a guaranteed quit. Like if you're ranked number one and you go into Hell Week, that person has never made it through Hell Week. The top, we've had Olympians that have tried to make it through and they can't because, like the first question that you asked, they're not resilient. They don't know what to do when shit unravels, and man, does it unravel quickly. What do you do when you can't think straight? What do you do when you can't button your buttons on your shirt because you're so frozen? What do you do when you can't breathe because there's no air? You're underwater. And that level of resilience is all that SEAL training is about, is giving you 1,000 feelings that it's all terrible and you're all going to die, and making it through one problem after the other when there's never seemingly a solution available. And you
All right.
just
Now
keep
let me
working it out.
because you said you were you were a trainer at one time.
Mhm.
So I had Lee Steinberg on here last week. He was the agent for like 8 number one draft picks in the
Mhm.
NFL, the greatest agent of all time, Jerry Maguire and everything.
Yep.
But he said, I can tell if there's an athlete sitting in front of me, I can tell whether he's going to be the number one pick or he's going to wash out just by me sitting there talking to him.
Mhm.
Were you able to do that? Were you able to just look and talk to somebody even for a couple of minutes and be like, he ain't got it? Or somebody saying, yeah, he got it?
No, it's never been resolved since 1939 when SEAL training started. You can never look at somebody and judge them at all in their ability, their capacity to uh, overcome hell. You have to watch them go through hell, and then even after Hell Week, you can't even judge somebody. It's very difficult to say this guy's going to be great or bad. Uh, and I wish I had a better answer than that. I've never been able to judge somebody, and all my judgments have been horrible. Like that guy's going to be good. That guy's going to be, poor. Sometimes the guys that you think are the weakest are the most demonstrative SEALs on the planet. Like
Okay, so now,
Michael Mansour, I put him through as a student, and he ended up jumping on a grenade to save his buddy's lives.
yeah.
You wouldn't have thought that if you were to look at him. You're like, he kind of looks like a California hippie. It's not a big thing, and uh, you never would have thought he had that inside of him. And a lot of the guys that ended up at SEAL Team 6 that were students when I was an instructor, I would never have thought they would go there. And then one guy won the Medal of Honor. I never thought that he would even make it out of training, or two guys have won the Medal of Honor. So it's a human failing to look at and judge somebody else. In the business of performance, you can tell who's a better athlete, no doubt about it. Like you can look at somebody and say he's going to kick my ass if I'm not careful. That's easier to judge that, but it's hard to judge somebody prior to in a situation where all hell's breaking loose. You can't prejudge somebody there.
Okay, so now where I'm sitting right now, if I go stand on my front porch, I'm overlooking where the Twin Towers once stood.
Hmm.
9/11 totally fucked my world up and changed my whole life, changed everything.
Mhm.
You said you were an instructor in that time.
Yep.
So what was that like? Of course, we've had stuff happen overseas, but what was that like being instructing during that time when shit hit home?
Yep. Well, I checked into SEAL training as an instructor. I had done 3 deployments at SEAL Team 2. I kind of got a little disgruntled because I was gone for about 280 days a year for the first 6 years. And I'm like, man, I need some downtime. Not that instructor was downtime, but I can't travel anymore without risking a divorce. And so I checked into Bud's training as an instructor September 9th, 2001. I was driving across the Coronado Bridge when the first airplane hit the tower. And my first impulse, like everybody else's, was some idiot just flew into the tower. So we're sitting there in the phase watching TV. The third or the second airplane hit, it was like you could hear a mouse fart. Nobody said anything. We all stood up quietly and went over to the armory and got all the guns out of the armory and stood up on top of the roof without being told. And everybody mobilized quickly. And so for the next 3 years of our lives, we knew that we were training guys to go to war, which is very rare. There's very rarely a war that you're immediately going to be trained to go to. And it was the greatest time to be an instructor because our captain that came out and said, I don't care if we graduate 1 or 100. All these guys are going to war and you're going to go to war with them. So be very conscious of the fact that you're training guys to die. And it was probably the greatest time in my life at that point in time was being an instructor responsible to training, SEALs to go to war.
Now, because a lot of people they would have, if you fell out of a military academy, they would have been like, all right, I'm done. I'll go work a 9 to 5 in a desk somewhere. So I just want to know, what made you decide, all right, I failed out of this, but I'm going to now go to the hardest training in the military. What was that mindset shift?
In my brain, I always thought I wanted to go to war. Like as a kid, the first book I remember reading was Last of the Mohicans. Who the hell reads that book? And if you read it now, you're like, I can't even read it. It's in old English, and and growing up with guys that had spent their young years at war. I knew 2 Medals of Honor winners. I knew top professional athletes. And at least in my brain, I thought, man, I have a proclivity. I was a really good shooter as a kid. I spent all my spare time, either in athletics or hunting. And I'm like, man, there's nothing in the civilian world that's going to meet me there. And the only thing that I could think of doing after West Point was become a SEAL. Because in my brain, I thought they were the best of the best, which I still say they are. And I'd already failed, so it couldn't get worse. I couldn't fail more. And I might as well fail at something noble, like trying to become a SEAL. And that's really why I went down to the recruiting office and said, to hell with it. I'm just going to sign up and put my head down and go for it.
Okay. So now, like I usually talk about this earlier, but your story is so amazing. And brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly humbled and grateful to be able to spend time together today.
Sure. Absolutely.
But what was it like walking into the recruiter's office saying, yeah, I just found out of here, but I want to be that Navy SEAL? What was that conversation like in the recruiter's office?
I think it was the only time in my life I actually was so determined. I was resolved. Like my heart rate was low. I wasn't nervous. It felt like I had burned all my boats on the beach and there was no way off the island. I'm like, okay, fuck it. I have to do this. And just by happenstance, there was a SEAL recruiter named Pat Hennigan that was in the office, which is rare. Like you'd never really get a SEAL in a recruiting office. And he was traveling between offices. And I was a dumbass. I walked in and I'm like, hey, I want to sign up solely for SEAL training. And Pat turned around. He had a trident on. I'm like, oh my God, how lucky am I? And he said, can you pass the test? I'm like, what test? And he said, all right, come here tomorrow. I'm going to give you the physical test. If you can't pass it, you can't sign up. So the next day I came and I failed to swim. He goes, I can't sign you up. He goes, come back in a month. I'm like, oh my God, another bad, indicator. So I swam for a month and I just barely passed it. And he goes, if you don't get better than 9 minutes, you won't make it through training. And I think I'd gotten a 12. And so then I signed up, and there was a delay because there were so many people trying to get in SEAL training. You can't immediately go the next week. And I had about a 10-month delay. So I'm like, all right, meals on the table. I just got to figure out how to eat the thing in front of me. And I swam every day for 9 months, and I worked out every day. Didn't do anything else. My parents gave me the grace of not having to have a job. And I literally worked out for 4 hours a day. And I finally made it into training by kind of overcompensating.
And I think that's an amazing story. And the reason I love it, because I'm a big sports guy. I love sports. But one of my favorite guys was Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to an interview last night because I knew we were going to talk. He said he was interviewed by Mr. Patrick Pet David. And he said his 12th grade, I mean, when he was 12 years old, he didn't score a single point the whole season. Well, not a free throw, not a point. He said, but he came back and he started breaking down. All right, for this 3-month period, I'm going to shoot nothing but threes. This 3-month period, I'm going to shoot nothing but mid-range jumpers. 2 years later, he was the best player in the state because he broke it down to the simple.
Yep.
Yeah, not something really to hop on. A lot of times we take everything so complex instead of breaking it down to the stupidest form, right?
Yeah, I literally, I knew I had to do push-ups, 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, pull-ups, run a 1.5 miles and swim 500 meters. Only thing I did was that. I didn't work out at a gym doing arbitrary stuff for vanity. I didn't care how I looked. I didn't care about my body weight because that wasn't the test. So I probably ended up doing close to 1,000 push-ups a day, 1,000 sit-ups a day. When I started to swim, I'm like, I'm fucking drowning. Like, I'm never going to figure this out. And some lifeguard at the pool said, "Oh my God, this is terrible watching you. What are you trying to do?" And I told him what I was trying to do, and ended up paying him to coach me on how to pass the swim test. And then you have to run in boots. So I never ran in anything but boots and pants. And I kind of looked ridiculous because nobody runs in boots and pants other than SEALs. And I just went out and did that every day, minimum of 3 hours a day. That's how you got to win. Everybody makes winning so complex, like, the vanity metrics and other stupid shit. You can Google how to win and then just do that. Don't do anything other than like Kobe. You have to go out and throw the ball up in the air and make a basket. Figure out how to do that first from different distances. Don't do anything else. If you can't dribble. It's that simple. Humans make everything complex. They don't need to, but they do.
Okay, so now I've talked to a lot of Navy SEALs and special operators. They get to the 8-year mark, and then they're like, you know what? Been there, done that. I'm done. I want to move on to the corporate world or public, whatever. Yep. So what made you, because a lot of times when you hit that 10-year mark, you're like, well, if I'm in for 6, I'm in for a dozen. So let me make a career out of it. Was that something? Did you have an exit plan from the beginning, or did you just know we're going year by contract?
I was on the 3-year by 3-year contract. So at the first 3 years, I'd seen combat already. So I signed up solely to get into a special SEAL platoon at Team 2 it was a winter warfare platoon. And I did that for 2 years. And then at the end of that term, I was disgruntled. It was probably at the 8 years in the military mark. And I'm like, hey, I need some downtime. And a guy named Ryan Zinke, who's now he's a congressman as well. He was the executive officer at Unit 2 in Germany. And I walked into his office, said, hey, I'm either getting out or I have to go to BUDS training. He goes, oh, cool. I'm going to go be XO at BUDS training. I'll give you orders in the morning. So I just played 3 years at a time. And at the 10-year mark, I was still in SEAL training. And I picked up chief at 12 years. And I'm like, hey, I want to go be a platoon chief at a SEAL team. So I had the next Everest in front of me each time. And people don't set up their lives that way. They make it a grind constantly. So I always had the next big thing going on. And if I wasn't going to get it, I probably would have gotten out. So I always had the greatest next thing in front of me. And it took me to 23 years.
All right, now I want to definitely get deep dive into that. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I wrote a book. Here, it actually came out in a new magazine. It actually came out and it hit #1 on Amazon just today. And if you pick up the book, it's called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. It talks about how to recover, how to come back, and also talks about addiction. And if you pick up the book, 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. I help out called Project Die Hard. So all the money goes to them, 100%, every single nickel. And also, if you guys want to start your own show, StreamYard is willing to throw you some cash to start your own show. So if you're interested in that, just write show down below. So Thom, let me ask you, because I found that whether you separate at 5 years, whether you separate at 23, like I did, you did, we get so wrapped up in being Sergeant Kaufman, you being, whatever your rank is. And then when we get out, unfortunately, the reality is the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing.
Yep.
And you no longer have a mission. And a lot of us, like for me, I got hurt on duty, lost my vision, and you can't see, you can't shoot. We don't need you. See ya. And I, for 23 years, I was Sergeant Kaufman. I tried to be the ultimate soldier. Well, now that I no longer in uniform, who's Richard?
Mm-hmm.
And it scared the shit out of me, and I attempted suicide Memorial Day 2012. Thank God it didn't come through. But a lot of people find that we all have a shelf life. Whether you're an athlete, you never see a 60-year-old running back. Whether you're an athlete, police officer, first responder, once we hang up that uniform, shit kind of goes sideways for a lot of people.
Agreed.
What was your thought process? Did you prepare before you got out for your next mission?
There's a lot of questions there. The first, I think, going from golden boy where everybody loves you, you can impact everybody, because at a certain point in the military, you are a massive impact. At 23 years, I knew everybody and everybody knew me. The analogy is your hands in a bucket of water, and every time you move your fingers, you create ripples. So in my brain, I went from impact player to zero. The transition from military to civilian is catastrophic if you've been in that long. Like, the identity's gone. I would rather have stayed in combat. Combat was clear. It was succinct. I knew what the hell was going on. The men sharpen their knives every day to be really good at their job. That was easier to transition to be a part of than getting out. When we got out, I didn't know what we were going to do. I thought that I knew. I had written some letters home to my wife and kids that my wife had asked me to make into a manuscript the year that we were getting out. I didn't know she was going to get it published, because I was one of those people in the camp that SEALs should not write books. And here I am having 2 books. And so she got it published without my knowledge the day we retired. So January 2014, she came to me and said, "Hey, your book is out." I'm like, "What, honey? You're not supposed to do that." And like yours, it became a bestseller, and I had no idea the world I was going to get into. But I immediately was faced with conflict. I had to figure out how to navigate this business world and not be in despair. Meaning, I didn't have nothing to do. Most soldiers and sailors and Marines, when they get out, they have nothing to do for a long period of time, which I think causes the problems. Fuck, I had the next war right in front of me. How do I navigate business? How do I get in front of people and speak? So to me, I immediately had to strap on the holster and the weapon and go to work. And I think that's what saved Stacy and I and the kids was I actually like the conflict of it. I like having to solve problems. So I immediately had to solve the problem of what do I do in the public sector? Because I was faced with it immediately. And then I'm like, okay, let's play big. Let's go for it. Let's treat it like it was the SEAL teams. Let's make the next Everest for us. And so 9 years into retirement now, I would say that transitioning is 10 times harder than being in the military. And our Stacy's and my saying to each other is one more day, just one more day. And I'm sure you got that post suicide. All I got to make it is one more day. If I make it to tonight and I fall asleep, I was successful. Yeah. And that's really what 9 years have been. Like it feels like it's unraveling all the time. It may look cool from the outside, but it is devastating. And maybe I get my head up for a week where I don't feel like it's terrible. But then the next week hits. Where does the money going to come from? I'm not home enough. I missed something that my kids did. And I just stayed in the one more day conversation. And my daughter is now an Apache pilot. She graduated West Point, 11 out of 1,200 kids. She's an Apache pilot in Korea. My middle boy is a junior at Clemson, and our youngest is a sophomore.
You had to say Clemson. Come on, I'm a South Carolina. I'm a game. I'm a game.
Hey, it's okay to be competitive. I'm just glad that he's in school. I don't care where he went.
Yeah. Great program. They get the great school, Clemson.
And it's, I say that not, hey, woe is me, and hey, try to do what I've done, but to every brother and sister out there that's transitioning, hey, one more fucking day, one more day, make it one more day. Go to sleep, leave that last day behind, another one more day, and you will be astounded at what you can accomplish if you stop negotiating with yourself about that.
Now, one of the one thing I love about the SEALs and the teams is, they always talk about, that the only easy day was yesterday.
Yep.
And, because a lot of people, they think they're always living in the past, they're always living, because veterans day, they just came, and you see a lot of these guys and girls, they don't realize, you've been out 10 years, you're no longer, you were a Navy SEAL, you are always a Navy, but, you have to graduate.
Yep.
Like a lot of people, they ask me, well, what do you do? I forget that I'm a retired veteran. I just say I'm a podcast host and I'm an author. I forget. But a lot of people, I think, we're still living in the past, and we haven't learned to move on. But something I wanted to ask is, when I lost my vision is when I started a podcast. I was actually doing a podcast blind. So again, I got like 80% of my vision back, but my hearing got so much better. And when you were talking about you and your bride, Stacy, you said the word we. You said the word us. And I know a lot of guys and girls that get out of the military, they start a t-shirt company, hat company, liquor. They don't talk it over with your significant other.
Yep.
Till $10,000 later, and then they got to have an even harder conversation.
Yep.
Talked about the we and the us.
I learned the we conversation. I call it oneness. So, come to find out in the SEAL teams, the easiest way to get kicked out of the team is to have a bad relationship at home, because you're going to get me killed. Like if your inability to function at home is going to get everybody else killed. That's also why it's an 80% divorce rate in the teams, because we don't learn how to function at home well. it caused me to have a divorce because I was more dedicated to the team than I was at home. My second wife, Stacy, she actually wanted me to be a SEAL. Like she loved it. She's like, "Hey, go to war. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear about the blood, the guts, what it's like, the down times, the up times." So we became not fractionally married. We became very interested in each other. Like even the worst things that could happen, we're able to talk about them. Uh, if you can't figure that out, man, you're less of a human being. The first book that ended up I wrote the title called Spartan Woman. The publisher said nobody's interested in strong marriages. Let's change the title to Unbreakable. But the book was written as Spartan Woman because the great men don't exist by themselves. They have to have another alpha female with them. And I now teach leaders, if you want to be a great leader, you have to be great at home. And it's a process. And you can't identify yourself as somebody separate than your spouse. It's not possible. If you are, you're less. If you can say the we conversation or the us conversation, it's not even a multiplication problem. It's a like to the power solution. And very few men give themselves the grace of having a badass woman at home.
And I love that. Like my wife, she's known me for almost 40 years. She's my best friend. She's my rock. And but women have like a ninth or 10th sense where if even in business, if she sees something is off,
Yep.
9.99 times out of 10, she's right.
Yep.
And so a lot of times, like whatever it is, I'm going to say, honey, what do you think? And if she's like, I'm not feeling it, then usually it's something off. And I think a lot of guys, they don't have that where they can go to their wife and
Yep.
say, what do you think, honey? Or you have a lot of guys are too prideful where they won't say, honey, I'm struggling.
Yep.
I just need a hug. I just don't tell me anything.
Yep.
Just hug me and let me know you're there. And I think that's
Yep.
where you create that unbreakable bond.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a small matter. What you're talking about is a big, big issue with every man, military. It's also the issue with strong women that they don't think they need a man. You can't do anything hard by yourself. Uh, I wish it was taught in school. Like we stay away from that conversation because nobody knows the damn solution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we know it notionally that you have to have a great marriage, but nobody knows how to. The how to is important. Like every single day that ends in Y, you better have a conversation with your spouse and you can do it over text. And you better have intimacy every day. Some relative intimacy doesn't have to be sex. Acknowledge them, whatever the 7 love languages are, figure out what your spouse's love language is and give it to her. What you said about decision making, every bad decision I've made in retirement, Stacy said it was going to be a bad decision, but I did it anyway. Every time we do well, it's because she's in agreement. I have no idea why that's the case. Every CEO that I've trained in the past 9 years, they look back at the bad decisions and they're like, yeah, I didn't have support. Then fucking don't make it anymore. Like literally put it on the table to your spouse and let them digest it. Their point of view is profound. They don't have to know anything about your business. It's just their interesting point of view normally works well. And I now every idea I have, I put on the table. And if she backs away from it, I'm not interested. Even though I thought it was going to work, I'm just not interested anymore. If I'm not going to get support, it's not worth it.
I love it. So now, you get out of the military, you decide to try to go into the civilian world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, we may have been the top of the rung, but like when I got out, I thought, I was it. And then
Yep.
I got into the business world and I didn't know shit. I didn't know anything. So yeah, I had to start at right from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about the steps you took when you got out to start to get into the civilian sector.
Well, I knew I was going to be behind. Like I didn't know anything about banking. I didn't know anything about investing. You know, I found something that I knew really well, and that was the human equation. The SEAL teams really understand how humans function well in conflict. They know how to rest. They know how to be healthy. They know how to communicate really well. They're very straightforward. I'm like, wow, I noticed that business didn't know the human equation. And I found a niche that I just call making people better versions of themselves. When you figure that out, you find a niche. So what do I know that I could rest my hat on? And health, my ability to learn, I can actually teach that. Uh, I think I define wealth or business as doing something that you value. If you're not doing something that you value, fucking don't do it anymore. Key relationships, that was another part that I figured out I could figure out and teach. And then the final resting place of success is spirituality. So those 5 areas, I found out I had a niche to be able to describe them, teach them. And derivative value of that is when you have all 5 areas working in your life, you can make a lot of money. And CEOs that don't have a good relationship, they're going to lose half right now. If they're not healthy, they're going to freaking die anyway. So getting those 2 back on point became relatively easy. The relationships at home we were just talking about is really the niche now. How to have a great life at home and be a leader at work. And nobody else is talking about it. So I found a way to deliver value there.
Okay.
Inadvertently. I didn't know that I was going to find that.
Now you mentioned a bunch of things I want to talk about, but and this might ruffle a few feathers, but you know,
Mhm.
you're a Navy SEAL. You know, you could have just become, and I'm not going to mention his name, so I'm not going to get sued, but you could have become a Navy SEAL that just writes a book,
Mhm.
um, is a loudmouth on Twitter, gets drunk every time,
Yeah, yeah.
and just causes drama instead of adding value into people's lives. So I'm sure that when somebody said, "Oh, you got a book coming out too," I'm sure,
Mhm.
I'm sure because sometimes a lot of people will think, "Oh, you're just another somebody that's trying to, say you're the Navy SEAL and you're doing the book tour thing."
Mhm.
So what was that like when when your wife published your first book?
Well, we were kind of early in that before everybody in the world thought it would be easy to publish a book and make money. And I wasn't interested in chasing the money side of it. I was more interested in, like you said, being some service to somebody else or provide something of value that I'd learned and be able to translate it into other people's lives. Intentionally, the book was to share what it was like to be a leader, a husband, and a man to my kids. And Unbreakable has 13 lessons that I wanted my kids to learn in case I died. And that struck a chord. You know who it struck a chord with? Women. Women never had been uh, acknowledged for their contribution to men. And in the book, I acknowledge that I wouldn't even fucking have a home if it wasn't for Stacy. I don't really care about the house and the articles of life done by. I can live in the woods very happily, uh, and I acknowledge her for that. And come to find out, like 70% of the people who bought the book initially were women trying to figure out their place in the world. And that was of great advantage to us, acknowledging women. And I wanted to find a way to do that from a male point of view. It's one thing when other women acknowledge themselves, but I know clearly that I wouldn't be half the person that I am, probably less than that, if Stacy wasn't a badass. And I wanted to find a way to acknowledge her to do that.
And I love that. So now like I said, a lot of people, they have to try to find their niche. Like for me, I realized that a lot of veterans, when they get out of the military, or even first responders, if they don't have a mission,
Mm-hmm.
they're more likely to commit suicide.
100%.
So if they come out and if they want to start a 501(c), if they want to start a business, they are so much less likely to attempt suicide
Mm-hmm.
because they got a mission. They got a reason to wake up in the morning, and that's how I found my niche. But I think and I had Rich Davini on, and one thing I really learned from him, from his book The Attributes, was that I guess they teach us in the teams that whatever happens, whether if I have a success, I celebrate it for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a loss, I'm down for 3 minutes, and then that's it. Move on to the next thing. Because I think a lot of people, like you said, if they took the loss, if they would, oh, I failed out of one of the military academies.
Yep.
I'm not fit for the military, so I'm just going to do something. I'm going to go work at Amazon.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I found my niche because my mentor, John Lee Dumas, said you have to find your perfect avatar, and sometimes you got to go an inch wide, but you got to go a mile deep.
Yeah, that's my life. Inch wide, mile deep. I can't find the shallow stuff. It doesn't entertain me to go an inch deep, a mile wide. I wish that I had found that in my life, but I haven't. I like the involved process of supporting people through hard things. And that's my niche. And it's no more valid than the inch deep. People that find the inch deep, mile wide, cool. The ones that find the profound impact that you can have on somebody, also cool. But you got to find it. The issue with finding it is you got to burn the boats. You can't search for 1,000 things. You got to search for one thing, play it out until it doesn't play out. And then, like you said, if it doesn't play out, 3 minutes later, you're on to the next thing, and you got to commit to that. Burn all the other boats until you get that next thing to work or not work. People don't give themselves the grace of full on 150,000% commitment to something. They give half their effort, and nothing ever works out at half. And
one thing I love about you, and by the way, I've gotten both your books since I knew we were going to speak, and I've been devouring them.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I like that you break everything down from the complex to the simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I've been in recovery for 33 years, and one of the things they talk about in all the programs is keep it simple, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, we're complex beings, but we're simple beings, but we create complex problems.
Yes.
And you seem to be able to break it down from the complex to the simple. So talk to us about how you got involved in doing that.
So I break it down this way. What in life is negotiable and non-negotiable? The negotiable stuff is complex. Like there's 1,000 options. Imagine if you were a kid, there's 1,000 girls on swipe right Snapchat that you can get involved with. So that's a complex problem. Having multiple choices makes things complex. In the SEAL teams, there's combat is complex inherently. What's non-negotiable? What's simple? Here's one thing that's simple: your ability to shoot. I can do something about that. I can learn how to shoot well. I can learn how to be an athlete. That's a simple solution. I can learn how to be a good husband. It's a simple solution. Come to find out, I've broken it all down into 3 simple things per category. For instance, if you work out, stretch, and drink water every day, you've made health very simple. If you, in the business world, if you try to get in front of somebody every day, you spend some time with your existing business and you think unencumbered, like strategically. Gosh, where are we going to be, Richard, in the next 10 years? Give yourself that advantage every day. There's 3 things: offense, defense, and strategic. learn something new every day, get better at something you've already done every day. And for a period of time each day, try to think out of the box. There's three things that are simple, non-complex. In relationship, it's simple. Listen to your spouse, speak to them without drama, and have intimacy every day. It's not complex. All the other shit is complex. How to solve problems, very complex. So breaking it down to simple makes the complex easy. So those three simple things are not negotiable. They're not. It's like breathing. Breathing is a simple thing. You can't negotiate with it. Try y'all to stop breathing. Try right now. So that being the case, try to do that every single day. To me, is that's the non-negotiable issues of life that people have negotiated away from. They try to do too much. Do simple shit every day, and you can't negotiate with it.
You
And
know,
watch what happens with your life.
and I think, and I totally agree 100%. Like I had David Meltzer come on the show. He lost $100 million by the age of 29,
Mhm.
and now his company's worth $20 billion. But he says, I have non-negotiables.
Yep.
He's like a lot of business owners, CEOs, they make time for their coffee, they
Yep.
make time for their meetings. They don't make time for their wife. They don't make time for their kids. They don't take 2-3 minutes to call mom on the phone. And it's the negotiables that really get people in trouble. Either you
100%.
succeed or you fail by your negotiables.
Yep.
For me, it's God, family, business.
Yep.
If it's not involved in there, I really don't have time for it. And that was something that Kobe said. Somebody asked him, he said, what made you so successful is because if it wasn't basketball or family related, I didn't want to be involved in it.
Yep. Yep.
So now talk to us, because like I love hearing, I love talking to people like yourself, Ed Milet, Tony Robbins, people like that. They talk about how your morning ritual and your evening ritual sets up your whole day.
100%.
So talk to us about your morning and evening ritual for winning.
I found that out too as a SEAL, and also studying leaders who I thought were top of the field. They also have non-negotiable morning and night. Everybody that wins has non-negotiable morning and night. So my practice is get up and turn on my body, like make my body move right off the bat. And then all five senses, people have no idea what their senses are for. So right in the morning, imagine tasting something good, smelling something good. Make sure your hearing works. There's a process of turning the eyes on that I've developed. And then, oddly enough, brushing your skin, because your skin is one of your five senses. It sounds weird, but now I'm the conduit in which spirituality happens. And then tell the world what you're going to do that day. For instance, I'm going to work out today. I'm going to be on a podcast with Richard, and I'm going to go purchase something for my business. And that's my non-negotiable today. All the other shit ain't going to happen over top of that. And then I do the same routine at night. I turn all my senses on. I don't want to go to bed exhausted and lethargic. Not work out, I'm saying, but turn the five senses on, make sure all my muscles have moved, all my joints have moved. And then I tell myself that night what I'm going to do the next day. When I wake up again, I reiterate it, because sometimes at night you can have great ideas like, oh my God, I just had an idea about a podcast. You know what I mean? So then you can reaffirm that in the morning. Like epiphanies happen. People don't even engage with that. So in the morning, I reiterate that, and it's not negotiable any day of the week. The days that I stupidly negotiate with it, my day is less. And I choose to work out in the morning. Not everybody has that time. And profound difference that those periods of time happen. In the night and the morning time, most people get out of bed, go straight to work with a coffee. They're not on. They go to bed lethargic and exhausted. They don't really want to work the next day. They didn't talk to their wives, all that shenanigans that happens. That's why you are where you are. It's because the
And,
night and morning times suck.
yeah. And for me, because Mr. John McCaskill, he taught me, he said, just 15 minutes when you wake up in the morning,
Yep.
just be for
Yep.
15 minutes. Don't touch your phone, just meditate, whatever it is. I
Yep.
call it praying. If that's me.
Yep.
But like for me, before I go to bed at night, I say my prayers. I pray for my wife, and then I just think of the day, the three things that I'm grateful for
Yep.
that day, and then I plan in my mind what I'm going to do the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get to wake up and I get to see something out of my eyes, which I was once blind,
Mm-hmm.
everything else is gravy from that point on.
Yep. Yep.
So I believe the most successful people in life, they go to bed with gratitude
Mm-hmm.
and they wake up with gratitude.
100%. Everybody that's successful the second time, the first time success could have been flopped in your lap like the lotto. The second one, you really get back to the basics, and that's what I call keeping things non-negotiable. And spirituality is never negotiable. Like you're the conduit in which, if you want to say it, God speaks. So make sure your shit works. Make sure your senses are available. Make sure you pray, meditate, whatever condition that you have, and start there. If you don't start there, the rest of your day is just blown where the wind takes you, which is a terrible, desperate life.
Okay, so now for the last couple of questions is if you can take, what would be your three best business advice that you would give to somebody if they're about to start a business in the year 2022?
I don't know if I would put it into a business. Get a skill set that turns you on. It could be plumbing. Try to master skill before you try to seek passion. Like you'll never find passion if you don't have a skill, whether it be underwater welding, plumbing, janitor, picking up trash. If you're skilled in it, acquire a skill set first. Then look for a business or a way to monetize a skill set. So skill, monetize it, and then third one is find a mentor that is willing to support you being better at the skill or at your business. So those three things are paramount: skill, uh, mentorship, and then monetizing that skill. If you're not in those three things, you're stuffed. If you're doing a job that you don't have skill set in, you're waiting to be taught what to do, you're already going to be lesser. If you think money is going to solve any of your problems without skills or mentorship, man, you're not going to get there. And take your hat off and have somebody better than you support you.
I love it. So now, last question is, what are you doing now, and how do we go about supporting your mission?
Well, I do a lot of keynote speaking now that COVID is done, and that you can find that on unbreakableleadership.com. Uh, every December I have a board of advisors that we get together, all the people that I've trained that want to be a part of our next effort. Every December we blow up our business. Like we take everything of the business and throw it off the table, and what works and what doesn't work. And I can't say anything for a while. Like the 12 of us get together. You can't be a keynote speaker. What else do you want to do? Oh, dude. What do I do? I can't be a keynote speaker for about 2 hours. I can't be a leader for 2 hours. I can't even be a dad. I have to prove to the board that the next effort is worth my time and energy. And we've done that now 9 years, and it's been transformative each time. From starting a podcast to, man, I don't want to do a podcast. They're like, do a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to learn something new. Please don't give me something new to learn. So if the board says yes, I have to say yes. And that's a weird form of leadership, as opposed to me telling the board what I think is important. Have other people of value tell you what the next steps are. And It's a brutal process. I hate it every year. And it actually probably kept us married. It kept our kids together, kept business growth going, that I didn't have to be the right person in the room all the time. I could take my hat off and listen to the other people who are 10 times smarter than me anyway.
You
And
know,
yeah.
and even, because I'm a big person, I love in personal development, and I'm always learning, I'm always reading. I got like 15 books going now at one
Mhm.
time. But one of the books, everybody loves Think and Grow Rich,
Mhm.
but they don't remember who he learned from.
Mhm.
And they don't remember that the main reason why the people successful got really successful in the late 1800s, early 1900s, was because of masterminds.
Yes.
Having a mastermind alliance, to
Yep.
where like veterans, we can say, if an outside person says, hey Thom, you kind of screwed the pooch today, we were like, whatever. But if one
Right.
of our own says, all right, you kind of fucked up, you need to
Yep.
get back on track a little bit, we're a little bit more likely to learn. So talk us for a minute about having and being a part of a mastermind.
Well, that was the second book I read when I was 14. I read Last Mohicans first. I'm sure I read other books, but the second one is Think and Grow Rich. Uh, that's where I came up with the non-negotiable stuff, that formula that he has in the middle of the book, close
Yeah.
to the middle. And then the mastermind group, being supported by people who are exceptionally better, that are interested in your outcome far more than you are. Uh, there's no way to do anything of substance without a mastermind alliance or a board of advisors, or I call it that you have to have at least 5 people in your life that support you. Uh, Without that, don't even try. Or you're just going to be a sheep anyway, and you're going to go where the tide takes you and the wind takes you. If you want to break out from the sheep characteristic, take your hat off and have a group of people that are demonstrably better. Here's the problem with the mastermind group. There's just fucking work to do. After you get together, you're like, oh, that was uncomfortable. Now the next 11 months are going to be extremely uncomfortable. And they demand more of you than you're going to do by yourself. That's really the distinction of a mastermind group. You can't put something on the table that you can't deliver. And they're going to support you delivering, and they have to deliver things too.
Yeah.
But that group is essential.
Yeah, and I love that. Like they say, if you're hanging around with 5 millionaires, guess who's going to be the sixth?
Oh, I guarantee.
But it also works out. If you're hanging out with the five losers that are about to get divorced, you're going to be number
Yep.
six.
Yeah, you'll
You know.
probably beat them.
So now, how do we find you, and how do we support your mission?
Yeah, so Frogman Out on Instagram. We project our training into that space. Unbreakableleadership.com is our website. And the easiest way to support what we're doing is you personally be committed to being the best version of yourself. Whether you engage us or just do that, that's really what I'm committed to, that everybody be the best version of themselves, whether they engage us or they engage another way to do that. That's the greatest service you can do to anybody on the planet.
And where can we find your books at?
Well, they're on Amazon as well. Unbreakable, A Navy SEAL's Way of Life, and Three Simple Things, Leading During Chaos. And I think the easiest way is to search Thom Shea, THOMSHEA. And for some reason, we're all over Google as well.
And you're very easy to get in touch with. You're very easy to get in contact with, email. So guys, make sure you're checking them out on LinkedIn. Make sure you're following them everywhere. I am. I've read, the 2 books. I'm actually reading for a second one. The first book, I'm actually on the third iteration. The
Awesome.
second iteration. So I love it. So guys, like I always talk about, the 3 words that I believe are the 3 most important words in the English language. Today, I decide. You get to decide whether you become a victim or a victor. So please make the decision to become a winner today. Make sure you pick up Thom's book. Make sure you befriend him. He's an amazing person, and your life will be so much better if he's in it.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.
Thom, have an amazing week, brother. God bless you. And, Stacy and the kids, tell them I said hey, and have an amazing week.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
All right, guys. Remember, I'm not going to be here. I'm taking a couple of days to hang out with Mom for a couple of days in Myrtle Beach. So I'll talk to you guys next week. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up.
Up.
I love you guys. Thom, have a great week.
Yes, sir. See you.